The year is 2017, a year that would mark a significant shift in the political landscape of the United States. A crisp January morning in Washington, D.C., the city is bathed in the soft glow of the rising sun, a new day dawning with the promise of change. The city holds its breath, a palpable tension in the air as the nation prepares for a historic moment. Millions around the world watch, a mix of anticipation and apprehension in their eyes, as Donald J. Trump takes the oath of office. The world is watching, waiting to see what this new chapter will bring. The 45th President of the United States, a title that carries immense responsibility and power. A businessman, a showman, a political outsider. Trump's journey to the White House was anything but conventional. His rise to power, improbable, unorthodox, has sent shockwaves through the global order. World leaders and financial markets alike are reacting, trying to make sense of this new reality. The world waits, eager, anxious, to see what this new era holds. Newsrooms buzz with activity, analysts and commentators dissecting every move. Trump's campaign was a symphony of disruption, a promise to overturn the established order. He tapped into a deep vein of discontent, promising to shake things up. Make America Great Again, his slogan, a rallying cry for those yearning for a return to a bygone era of American dominance. It resonated with many who felt left behind by globalization and technological change. His words, often incendiary, struck a chord with a segment of the population disillusioned with the political elite. They saw in him a champion, someone who would fight for their interests. He vowed to tear down trade deals, to confront China, to build a wall on the southern border. These promises were bold, controversial, and they set the stage for a presidency unlike any other. His foreign policy pronouncements were equally bold, a mix of isolationism and hawkishness, promising to put America first and to crush America's enemies. He spoke of a new approach, one that would prioritize American interests above all else. The first 100 days of a presidency are often seen as a bellwether, a glimpse into the soul of an administration. For Trump, these early days were a whirlwind of activity, a test of his ability to deliver on his promises. For Trump, these early days were marked by a flurry of activity, a whirlwind of executive orders, controversial appointments, and bold pronouncements. His administration hit the ground running, eager to make its mark. His use of executive power was unprecedented, bypassing Congress to enact his agenda. This approach drew both praise and criticism, highlighting the deep divisions in American politics. He pulled the United States out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement, imposed a travel ban on citizens from several Muslim-majority countries, and authorized the construction of a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border. These actions were met with fierce opposition and sparked widespread protests. These actions sent shockwaves through the global community. Allies and adversaries alike were left to grapple with the implications of these bold moves. Allies were left wondering about America's commitment to its traditional alliances. Long-standing relationships were put to the test as the new administration charted its own course. Adversaries watched with a mix of amusement and concern. They saw opportunities and risks in the unpredictability of the new U.S. president. The world was entering uncharted territory, grappling with the implications of a U.S. president who seemed to operate by his own set of rules. The international order was being reshaped in real time. The stage was set for a tumultuous 4 years. The nation and the world braced for what was to come, knowing that the impact of these first 100 days would be felt for years to come. Trump's campaign was a masterclass in populism, a strategy that resonated deeply with a significant portion of the American electorate. His rallies were electrifying, filled with fervent supporters who felt they finally had a candidate who spoke their language and understood their struggles. It was a potent cocktail of economic nationalism, a call to arms for those who believed that America's greatness had been eroded by decades of poor policy decisions and neglect, anti-establishment fervor, and promises of American restoration. He tapped into a deep well of resentment among working-class Americans who felt left behind by globalization and neglected by the political class. His message resonated with those who yearned for a return to a time when America stood tall on the world stage, unburdened by global commitments and unchallenged in its might. This sentiment was particularly strong in regions that had seen factories close and jobs disappear, leaving communities struggling to survive. America First became the defining mantra of his candidacy, a slogan that encapsulated his vision for the country. It was a call to prioritize American interests above all else, to focus on rebuilding the nation from within, a rejection of what he saw as the failures of globalism and multilateralism. He railed against trade deals that he claimed had shipped American jobs overseas, deals that he argued had benefited other countries at the expense of American workers. He promised to bring back manufacturing to the Rust Belt, to revive the industries that had once been the backbone of the American economy. This promise struck a chord with many who had seen their livelihoods vanish and their communities decline, and vowed to renegotiate the terms of America's relationships with its allies. His rhetoric was often divisive, challenging the status quo and questioning long-standing alliances. Pitting America against the world, he portrayed the country as being taken advantage of by others, a narrative that resonated with those who felt that America had been too generous for too long, portraying foreigners as threats to American jobs, security, and way of life. This message was particularly powerful in areas that had been hit hard by economic changes and where people felt their way of life was under threat. On the campaign trail, Trump reserved his harshest criticisms for China, a country he accused of undermining American prosperity, which he accused of currency manipulation, unfair trade practices, and a host of other economic transgressions. He painted China as the primary villain in the story of American decline, and stealing American intellectual property. He promised to label China a currency manipulator on his first day in office, a bold move that signaled his intent to take a hard line. To impose tariffs on Chinese goods, a measure aimed at protecting American industries and jobs from what he saw as unfair competition, and to confront China's assertiveness in the South China Sea. His tough talk on China played well with his base, particularly in the industrial Midwest, where many blamed China for the decline of American manufacturing. This region, once the heart of American industry, had been particularly hard hit by the forces of globalization and economic change. Trump's campaign promises sent shockwaves through the global community. Allies were left wondering about the future of long-standing partnerships. Adversaries saw an opportunity to exploit potential divisions within the Western alliance. The world braced itself for a period of uncertainty and upheaval as Trump prepared to assume the mantle of the presidency. His approach signaled a significant shift in American foreign policy, one that would have far-reaching implications for the global order. Trump's approach to foreign policy was unlike anything seen from previous presidents. His style was brash, direct, and often controversial, breaking away from the traditional diplomatic norms that had long governed American foreign relations. Gone were the days of soaring rhetoric about American exceptionalism or the promotion of democracy abroad. Instead, Trump emphasized a more pragmatic and often nationalistic approach, focusing on what he perceived as immediate benefits for the United States. In their place was a transactional approach, a focus on short-term gains and a willingness to use American power to extract concessions from both allies and rivals. This method was a stark departure from the multilateralism that had characterized U.S. foreign policy for decades. Trump, the consummate dealmaker, brought his business acumen to the world stage, viewing international relations as a zero-sum game where there were winners and losers. He believed that every deal should directly benefit the United States, often at the expense of other nations. Central to Trump's foreign policy was the belief that America's allies had been taking advantage of the United States for too long. He saw the U.S. as being overly generous, providing security and economic benefits without receiving adequate compensation in return. He argued that countries like Germany, Japan, and South Korea were not paying their fair share for American military protection and were benefiting unfairly from trade deals. This perspective led to significant tension with these nations, as Trump pushed for them to shoulder more of the financial burden. He demanded that these countries increase their defense spending, renegotiate trade agreements, and demonstrate greater deference to American interests. This often involved tough negotiations and public criticisms, which strained traditional alliances. Trump's transactional approach was perhaps most evident in his dealings with NATO. He saw the alliance as outdated and questioned its relevance in the modern world, particularly when it came to the financial contributions of member states. He repeatedly questioned the value of the alliance, calling it obsolete and suggesting that the United States might not come to the defense of NATO members who did not meet their defense spending commitments. This rhetoric caused significant unease among NATO members. His criticisms of NATO rattled America's European allies, who had come to rely on the United States as a guarantor of their security. The uncertainty surrounding America's commitment to NATO led to increased anxiety and calls for greater European self-reliance in defense matters. Trump's approach to foreign policy was not without its critics, who argued that it was undermining America's standing in the world and alienating long-standing allies. They feared that his focus on transactional deals was eroding the trust and cooperation that had been built over decades. They contended that his transactional approach ignored the importance of values and principles in foreign policy and risked turning America into a bully rather than a leader. Critics argued that this could lead to a more unstable and unpredictable international environment. However, Trump's supporters argued that he was simply putting America's interests first and that his tough stance was long overdue. They believed that his approach was necessary to correct imbalances and ensure that the United States was no longer taken for granted on the global stage. Supporters saw Trump's foreign policy as a refreshing change, one that prioritized American strength and sovereignty. They felt that his willingness to challenge the status quo was a sign of strong leadership, even if it meant ruffling feathers internationally. In the end, Trump's transactional diplomacy left a lasting impact on America's role in the world. Whether viewed as a necessary recalibration or a dangerous departure from established norms, it undeniably reshaped the landscape of international relations during his presidency.